Hello Danila, this is my feedback to your mock listening exam. Now before we get into the paragraphs, let me say, for the final exam you need to have one document with two sets of notes, first notes and final notes. And the first notes should look different than the final notes. So make sure that there is a substantial difference between the two sets of notes. Okay. Also, if you go to the guidelines, you will see that you need to, at the end of your notes document, at the bottom, maybe after the final notes, you should explain, it may be in 3 or 4 sentences, how your notes changed between the first notes and the final notes. What did you do? What did you do to change those notes? So you have to explain that briefly. Okay, that's part of that whole document. So make sure you have that for the exam, okay? And make sure that the final notes are quite different than the first notes. Okay, now let's look at the summary first. You've included everything, but he argues that should come in the first sentence. So you do not need to say discusses. Just go straight into the very first sentence should include he argues that. That should be the main idea, and it actually said it very well. But you do not need to say discusses, because discusses is not argumentative. So the first sentence should state the main idea. You've stated it well, and you should state it argumentatively, right? So forget this bit. Just go straight into Adam Grant argues that, and then finish. Okay. Now, here, this is not grammatical. Argues that original thinkers who dream up new ideas and take action to put them into the world, and then what? It's unfinished, right? So you need to add something to make this a finished sentence, because you're missing something here. Okay. At the beginning, now in a summary, remember we're only focusing on the supporting ideas. So here you do not need this his own example. Remember, we stay away from examples in evidence. And this is just a story he gives just to start the speech, just to kind of warm up the audience. We do not need to include that in the summary. Just go straight into here, into the habits, right? We're not interested in him, we're interested in the habits of original thinkers. So this is very good actually. From here to here. Very nice. You have included the main ideas, you have explained things, so this is a good summary. But you do need to work on the first sentence. The verb argues that, and what follows should be right at the beginning, the first sentence. Okay. Now for the conclusion, again your conclusion is very good, but you do need to include a cohesive device. In conclusion, blah blah blah, right? Or the speaker concludes by claiming that, something like that. But overall, you've got reporting verbs, you've got a lot of good things here. You've got cohesive devices, you have talked about the main ideas, the supporting ideas. So very nice. Identification is also good. You've clearly identified one of the supporting ideas and you've mentioned the evidence, so fine, that's nice. Now let's look at the paragraph itself. First of all, I notice to really explain all the 3 aspects, sufficiency, representativeness, and relevance, you actually do need 200 words. So just by looking at the word count, you do need to expand a little bit. And in particular, you need to expand on the first 2 sections, because you see up to here, you've talked about both sufficiency and representativeness, but very briefly, and then look at, both sufficiency and relevance, and then look at the representativeness. So what I would encourage you, make it a little bit more balanced, explain each one of them as well as you can, and that should take you up to the 200 words. I think you've wasted a lot of space on representativeness here, just talking a lot about Martin Luther King and the fact that it's not really a typical example, which is great. That's very nice that you're doing it, but just try to say it more economically, more succinctly. But I like your idea here when you say that it's only one case, all these things. You also say maybe what made him have that great speech is that he actually had the experience, as you're saying here, amazing knowledge. So this is all very good. but you're just saying it in too many words, right? To be more brief, you can say Martin Luther King is not necessarily, his speech is not necessarily a typical example of the creative process of original thinkers, blah, 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 you know. So if you can just make this a little bit more concise, that would be good. But I like your thinking, the way you've attacked the representativeness. Usually when we talk about representativeness, we think about, is that example given typical? Is it representative? Is the case of Martin Luther's last minute addition to his speech, is that representative of the typical creative process of original thinkers? And the answer is probably no. Okay, so now let's go back to the first half. What you've said is nice, it's good, but you do need to say more. So for instance, it's good that you're saying what is missing, right? But then you should add, okay, various studies, but various studies showing what? The survey or analysis, what should it show, right? You could say various studies need to be done which prove the relation between this and that. A survey which establishes blah, blah, blah. You see, what should these surveys do? What should these studies do? That's what you need to add here. But I like your thinking here. You're saying it's not sufficient, but we need more. More to do what, right? That's what you need to add. As far as the relevance, again, you need to expand a little bit. You're saying you procrastinated to write this amazing speech in the last few minutes. Now, here when you say typical procrastination, that's more like representativeness. That sounds like you're talking about representativeness. For relevance, what you can say is the speech writing of Martin Luther King relevant to the creation of ideas of original thinkers? I mean, okay, so it's just one type of speech writing. How relevant is that as an example? Again, let's go back to what we are attacking. Sometimes they procrastinate, original thinkers, but that helps them change the world. So how relevant is that example of the speech? And in particular, not just of the speech, but of the addition of that final, those words, I have a dream, to the speech. How relevant is that? Right? And your answer is, it's somewhat relevant, but not really. Well, why is it not relevant? You're saying here, he procrastinated in the last few minutes is the obvious manifestation of typical procrastination of creative ability. Okay, but why is it not? If you say it's somewhat relevant, why is it not relevant? This is the reason why it is relevant. But why is it not relevant? Right? So you could add that here. Well, to what extent, we have to answer the question, to what extent is speech writing, adding a little phrase to a speech, really an example of the fact that original thinkers procrastinate? Who knows, maybe Martin Luther King, he may have added these words in the last minute, but that doesn't mean that he procrastinated during the whole speech. Maybe he actually drafted the speech very carefully and he just added these words. So the adding of a few words to the beginning of a speech, that's not relevant. So you could say that, something like that, you see. So basically what I'm trying to say, you've done a good job here, but just make it more balanced, add a little bit about sufficiency and relevancy, and maybe make this more concise. Okay, but overall you're on the right track. You've understood the three terms: representative, sufficient, and relevant. So I think you're in good shape. So overall, good work, Janela. I'm quite pleased with your work, and I wish you the very best in the exam. I have an office hour later today. Not an office hour, but a consultation hour. You're more than welcome if you have any questions. But I think you're in good shape from what I can see, and I wish you the very best.